Verstappen has done very little to repair his already tarnished reputation, as he's been involved in brawls with both opponents and teammates. His brawl with one of his teammates got so bad that the teammate was even forced to leave Red Bull. Having replaced Daniel Kvyat at the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix, Verstappen became Australian driver Daniel Ricciardo's teammate for Red Bull Racing at the age of 18. However, even though Verstappen was already a proven, remarkable young talent, and Ricciardo was one of the best drivers on the grid, the experience wasn't altogether pleasant for Ricciardo, who had to deal with the Dutch driver's antics. In 2017, a year after becoming Ricciardo's teammate, Verstappen, who had lost ground in Turn 2 and was almost passed by Ricciardo, speared into the Australian driver in Turn 3, causing Ricciardo's radiator to burst and forcing him to retire. Verstappen earned a 10-second penalty for the collision, but it wasn't enough to appease Ricciardo, who was furious at what Verstappen had done. The Australian driver firmly indicated that Verstappen's move was an amateur error, and that the Dutch driver despises it when his teammates get ahead of him. That was amateur to say the least. I don't think he likes when a teammate gets in front of him. He had the whole race to try and repair a mistake, but it wasn't a pass. It wasn't even an attempt. It was just a very poor mistake, said Ricciardo. Even Red Bull team principal Christian Horner was irritated by the incident, expressing clearly that it was frustrating. He's on the limit and he made a mistake today. We lost Daniel, and the same move gave Max a penalty and cost the team points, so it was very frustrating, said Horner. Verstappen, however, apologized for the incident. It's never my intention to hit anyone, especially your teammate, and especially with the relationship I have with Daniel. It's very good and we can always have a laugh, said Verstappen. Despite both sides' efforts to put the damage behind them, their relationship took an ugly turn the following year during the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, when Ricciardo recklessly collided into the back of Verstappen after losing his position to the Dutch driver. Speaking about the incident, Ricciardo stated that he was annoyed by Verstappen cutting into him, which was worsened when he realized that the team was not going to assist him. We touched wheels a few times where it was always Max coming into me, as opposed to me going into Max. Part of me was waiting for the team to say, cut the shh, but never really got that. So then, I was furious as well. I'm like, guys, I put all the hard work in. I've passed him and now he's back in front of me. Surely you're going to let me go this time. To be honest, at the time of impact, I was just like, who cares? They, the team, deserve this. That was my honest feeling. I wasn't feeling sad or angry that I've just lost points. I think everyone saw it, meaning the crash coming. Verstappen was also partly to blame for the high-speed collision, given his aggressive defending, asserted that Ricciardo's assault on him from behind was harmful to the team, and was bad enough that he had nothing to say to his Australian teammates at the moment. I don't want to talk about it. It's bad for the team, and I think that's bad enough, Verstappen said. However, a year after the incident, Ricciardo explained that the Baku incident eventually prompted him to leave the Milton Keynes-based team, since Verstappen was just ready to end his career. Regardless, the Australian driver insisted that now that they're no longer direct competitors, their mutual respect has grown, and they are better friends than they were before. But if Verstappen is capable of getting his teammates agitated and frustrated enough to leave Red Bull Racing, imagine what he's capable of doing to other drivers on the grid who are not. We are describing a driver who got into a fight with a rookie racer in the paddock. The rookie driver was none other than Esteban Ocon, and throughout the physical altercation, the Dutch driver was the only aggressor. Max Verstappen and Esteban Ocon have always been fierce rivals since their karting days. Max and I were always quite close on track, and sometimes it came too close. In 2011, we were fighting for the 2011 World Series Championship, the WSK Euro Series KF3 class, and he won in the end. I remember a race in Italy I came out on top, but me and him were a long way ahead of the rest. It was a rivalry that started then, and it soon became even bigger, Ocon said. And as he explained, their rivalry progressed to F3 and ultimately Formula 1. However, Verstappen received a Formula 1 contract before Ocon, to the dismay of the French driver, who considered that he was a superior driver in F3. When I saw the news, it was difficult to swallow. He was third in the championship. I was winning, and I didn't have a seat in any category at that time, said Ocon. Regardless, Esteban Ocon joined Formula 1 a year and a half later, and their rivalry quickly became so heated that Verstappen got aggressive with Ocon. Verstappen, who was leading at the Sao Paulo track, attempted to pass Ocon, who was also aiming to move ahead of him despite being a lap behind. Unfortunately, both cars collided, causing Verstappen to spin and subsequently lose the race to Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen was heard on the radio yelling at Ocon, calling him an idiot who had taken a stupid risk. "I hope I can't find him now in the paddock because that guy has an effing problem," Verstappen said on the radio. True to his threat, things got violent in the paddock after the race, with TV footage showing an enraged Verstappen forcing an altercation with Ocon after he shoved and punched Ocon forcibly on the chest numerous times. Speaking about the altercation, Ocon said, "What I'm really surprised of is the behavior of Max. The FIA having to stop him from being violent, pushing me and wanting to punch me. That's not professional." Nonetheless, Ocon received a 10-second stop-and-go penalty, while Verstappen was sentenced to 2 days of community service. Notwithstanding, Verstappen blamed his behavior on high emotions, claiming that he had lost the race through no fault of his own, and subsequently reconciled with Ocon after meeting the steward. "What can I do about it? I lost a victory, but hopefully in 15 years' time we can laugh about it," Verstappen said. But while his brawl with Esteban Ocon and even his former teammate Daniel Ricciardo may have been motivated by competitiveness, the Dutch driver's dispute with another teammate of his might have been motivated by selfishness or a vendetta. The disrespect with Sergio Perez was so inappropriate and unnecessary that Checo, famed for his modest demeanor, bluntly reminded Verstappen that he owed him 2 championships. The Minister of Defense, as he's popularly known, joined Red Bull to partner Max Verstappen for the 2021 F1 season, and is widely credited with assisting Verstappen in clinching the F1 title at the penultimate race in Abu Dhabi, as his defense kept Lewis Hamilton at bay. Also, during the 2022 season, he obeyed the team's request twice at the Spanish Grand Prix, allowing Verstappen to overtake him. However, as much as their friendship and teamwork grew, the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix appeared to put their relationship to the test. During the qualifying session, Perez crashed, forcing the race to be stopped and Verstappen unable to improve on his fastest time, which infuriated the Dutch driver, as he later accused his teammate of purposefully crashing his car. "It is irritating, and a pity of course, that one who put it in the wall was my teammate," Verstappen said. Nonetheless, Perez had no idea that his series of selfishness would be rewarded by Verstappen's selfishness 7 months later. At the Brazilian Grand Prix, Verstappen had already been named the world champion, and as such, he was racing for nothing but honor, as opposed to Checo, who was racing to gain a comfortable lead over Ferrari's Charles Leclerc in the driver's standings. During the race, Perez dropped down the grid after a safety car restart because he was struggling on medium tyres, and Verstappen quickly overtook him. However, after failing to overtake Fernando Alonso, Verstappen was ordered by the team to allow Perez back through, which he flatly refused, and even gave some pretty serious orders to his race engineer, saying, "I told you already last summer. You guys don't ask that again to me. Are we clear about that? I gave my reasons and I stand by it," Verstappen said. Verstappen's refusal to let Perez pass ultimately cost the Mexican driver 2 points, and he inevitably lost the second-place position to Leclerc at the end of the last race of the season. Perez was confused at what just happened, expressed that he was disappointed and startled by the Dutch driver's decision not to allow him to pass after everything he's done for him. "It shows who he really is. I'm very surprised. I don't know what happened, especially for everything I've done for him. I think if he has 2 championships, it's thanks to me," Perez said. However, while Verstappen's disrespect may appear to be reserved for drivers without a championship, this is not the case, as drivers with several Formula 1 titles are not exempt from his contempt, and one of those drivers is 4-time F1 winner Sebastian Vettel. Back in 2016, during the Belgian Grand Prix, Verstappen collided with both Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen, who were Ferrari drivers at the time in Turn 1. Verstappen, apparently irritated after learning that both drivers blamed him for the incident, and arrogantly disrespected both championship winners, when he said, "I think they should be ashamed to cause a crash like that with their amount of experience and then complain about me. They have to understand I'm not happy with them screwing up my entire race." The Dutch driver, however, blamed Vettel in particular for the incident and got more disrespectful when he threatened both drivers, saying, "If Vettel hadn't turned in and left 1 more meter of room, we would have all got through. If they screw up my race, I'm not going to make it easy for them. I think they should understand that." However, just when you thought they'd patched things up, 2 months later, at the Mexican Grand Prix, a 19-year-old Verstappen called a 31-year-old Vettel something degrading, further damaging their relationship. During the race, Vettel had a radio meltdown as Verstappen refused to give up track position after running off track to protect his position in the final stages of the race. As a result, Vettel was compelled to defend his position against Ricciardo, which inevitably ended in a contact that cost him a penalty, causing him to lose his podium spot to Ricciardo and drop to 5th behind Verstappen. Vettel expressed his rage even more as he approached Verstappen and wagged his finger. Verstappen did little to soothe the situation after the race, further disrespecting the 4-time F1 champion when he said, "I think he needs to go back to school. It's just ridiculous. I will speak to him. He is always frustrated. He's just a very frustrated guy, shouting on the radio like a child." Vettel was, however, calm after the race, even going as far as to tell the press that he likes Verstappen in general, but that he needs to learn some track skills and calm down because he's harming himself more than he's helping himself. However, while Vettel may have been able to absorb the insult without retaliation, another multiple world champion did not. The 2021 Formula 1 season will be remembered for the all-season rivalry between Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. The duo collided many times, and there was back and forth between both drivers and their camps throughout the season. However, prior to the 2021 season, the duo had a verbal spat in 2018 after Verstappen provoked a collision when attempting to pass Hamilton at the Bahrain Grand Prix, denying Hamilton a podium finish. Hamilton, who rewatched the event before the podium ceremony, went explicit on Verstappen and later remarked that the driver, who was 20 at the time, was disrespectful. There needs to be a certain respect between drivers, and ultimately, maybe I need to go and watch the maneuver again, but it didn't feel like a respectful maneuver. It was a silly maneuver for himself because he didn't finish the race, Hamilton said. Verstappen, however, was unapologetic about the encounter, even claiming that Hamilton was picking on him since he was the younger driver. It's quite simple and easy to blame the younger driver. That's the only way I can see it. Why should I change something? I was just trying to overtake a car. I don't understand why everybody is on top of the topic because those things happen in racing. Regardless, Hamilton chose to be the bigger person by apologizing to Verstappen for his choice of words and said that he would prefer to put their dispute behind them. Hopefully that sign of respect shows we can turn the page and move forward in racing each other, Hamilton said. Unfortunately, Verstappen's disrespect for the 7-time F1 champion did not end with the 2018 season, as emotions between both drivers and their racing teams were so severe that they came close to trading blows in the 2021 season. The pair made contact at Imola, Monza, Jeddah, and the infamous Silverstone that left Verstappen in hospital while Hamilton went on to win the race. Verstappen, who was furious with the crash, even went ahead to label Hamilton as well as the entire Mercedes racing team uncivil after they celebrated the win while he was in the hospital. When one guy's in the hospital and the other one is waving the flag around like nothing has happened, well, you've pushed the guy into the wall with 51G. And not only that, but just the whole reaction of the Mercedes team besides that. That's not how you celebrate a win, especially a win how they got it. That's what I found really disrespectful. And in a way, it shows how they really are, Verstappen said. Tensions between the two drivers escalated at the US Grand Prix after Verstappen went vulgar on Hamilton. During the second practice session in Austin, both drivers went wheel to wheel down the pit straight, forcing the Dutch driver to give the British driver the middle finger and yell over the radio, "Stupid idiot." So given this level of ongoing disdain, it was unsurprising when the Dutch driver confessed to despising the 7-time F1 champion, and that the two drivers' relationship deteriorated to the point where Lewis Hamilton now frequently avoids mentioning the Dutch driver's name in press conferences, and instead prefers to praise Red Bull in general. Regardless, as much as Hamilton and Verstappen were close to a brawl, and even had high-speed collisions, the Dutch driver never called the British driver a derogatory slur on or off the circuit, like he did another driver on the grid. Since their karting days, Max Verstappen and Aston Martin driver Lance Stroll have been rivals, and they both came through the FIA European F3 Series. Regardless, Stroll's performance didn't come close to Verstappen's, and their rivalry didn't become serious until the 2020 Portuguese Grand Prix, when Verstappen demeaned the Canadian-Belgian racing driver with his choice of words. During the second practice for the Portuguese Grand Prix, both drivers crashed at turn 1 after going side by side into the corner. The incident caused Stroll to crash while Verstappen's car was visibly damaged. As a result, the Dutch driver became enraged and was heard on the radio calling Stroll a retard and a Mongol. Is this effing guy blind? What the F is wrong with him? Jesus Christ, what a retard. I have damage. What a Mongol, I swear, Verstappen said. When questioned about his choice of words, the Dutch driver retorted that it was none of his business if anyone took offense. However, he eventually apologized, but not after demanding that the incident should not be made worse than it already was. "I never meant to hurt anyone in particular. so I don't think they need to make it bigger than it is, Verstappen said. But regardless of how these drivers feel about Max Verstappen being able to get away with being disrespectful, the truth remains that he's one of the best on the grid and has already made a spectacular career in Formula 1, which has given him the opportunity to receive extremely high pay packages. One thing that is common to most Formula 1 drivers is that they all own extremely expensive items, and Max is no exception. Verstappen might be one of those drivers that flaunts his expensive assets, but there are some drivers who own some stupidly expensive things that you might not know about. One driver spent $6 million on a sports car, whereas one driver bought a fully electric yacht. But who are these drivers, and why? I know you want to know more about this, so click the video right here.